morning. So I want to talk a little bit about dishonesty. I want you to consider something like Enron, a financial crisis, and ask yourself, what do you think this is more a cause of? A few bad apples, a few people who decide to cheat and cheat in a big way? Or is it more of a cause of widespread wishful blindness? I'll try and give you the way that we look at this. So I do simple experiments with human beings, and the basic experiment we did to look at this question is the following. Imagine you were in the experiment. I would give you a sheet of paper with 20 math problems that each of you could solve if you had enough time. I would pass it along. I would say you have 5 minutes, solve as many of those as you can. I'll give you $1 per question. You would go ahead, you would work as fast as you can. When the 5 minutes are over, I would say, please stop, put your pencil down, and count how many questions you got correctly. Now that you know how many questions you got correctly, please go to the back of the room and shred your piece of paper. And now come back to the front and tell me how many questions you got correctly. Most people do this. They come and they say, we solved 6 problems. They get paid $6. What the people in our experiments usually don't know, actually they never know, is that the shredder has been fixed. So the shredder only shreds the sides of the page, but the main body of the page remains intact. I can jump inside and I can find out how many questions they really solved correctly. What do we find? Vast majority of the people solve 4 problems and reporting to be solving 6. Now, we've run this experiment on about 30,000 people so far. And from these 30,000 people, we found 12 that were big cheaters. Right? And we lost about $150 to them. We found 18,000 people who were little cheaters, and we lost 36,000 to them. And I think this is actually a good comparison, right? There are some big cheaters out there, but are incredibly few. And there's a tremendous amount of little cheaters. But because there's so many of them and things are so frequent, the financial devastation of that second activity is much higher. Now, how do we think about this dishonesty? There's lots of factors that get our ability to cheat more and our ability to cheat right can fluctuate, but I want to tell you 2 kind of mechanisms that change that. The first one, I'll tell you a little joke. Johnny comes home from the school with a note from the teacher that said that little Johnny stole a pencil from the kid who's sitting next to him. And Johnny's father is furious. And he says, Johnny, I'm embarrassed and humiliated. You never, never, never steal a pencil from the kid who's sitting next to you. You're grounded for 3 weeks and just wait until your mother comes. And besides, Johnny, if you need a pencil, you know very well you could just say something. You could just mention it, you can point it out, you can ask me, and I can bring you dozens of pencils from work. Now, why is this amusing, or a little bit amusing? I think because we all recognize that taking a pencil from work is something we can easily justify, versus taking 10 cents from a petty cash box. Even if we just took it and went ahead and bought a pencil, would feel very differently to us. So we ran our experiment this way. We ran the same experiment with the simple math problems, but we had 2 conditions. In one of them, you came to the experiment and you say, Mr. Experimenter, I solved X problems, give me X dollars. In the second one, you would come and you would say, Mr. Experimenter, I solved X problems, give me X tokens. And we paid people with pieces of plastic. People took these pieces of plastic, walked 12 feet to the side, and changed them for dollars. So when somebody was looking into the eyes of the experiment, they were cheating not for money. They were cheating for something that was 1 step removed from money. What happened in our experiments? People doubled their cheating. Right? This, by the way, is one of the most worrisome experiments I think we've ever conducted, because if you think that being 1 step removed from cash relieves people from the moral shackles, what about stock options? Mortgage-backed securities. Think about all kinds of things that has many, many steps in them. Could it be that in those cases, human ability is quite fantastic in both acting dishonestly but rationalizing things quite quickly to ourselves? That's the first kind of point I want to point out, is that dishonesty in the way we find it is a lot about rationalization. And what helps us rationalize something increases dishonesty, and when it's harder to rationalize something, it decreases dishonesty. Here's another little story. I'll give you the Jewish version. A guy goes to the rabbi and he says, Rabbi, you wouldn't believe what happened. Somebody stole my bicycle from synagogue. The rabbi is appalled. Somebody stealing your bike from synagogue? How could this happen? He said, come next week to synagogue back and sit in the front row. And as we go over the 10 Commandments, turn around and look at everybody in the eyes. And when we get to thou shalt not steal, see who can't look you in the eyes, that's your criminal. The guy comes back the next week, sit in the front row, turns around, look at everybody else during the 10 Commandments. He comes back to the rabbi at the end of the services and says, Rabbi, you wouldn't believe it. It worked like a charm. The moment we got to thou shalt not commit adultery, I remember why I left my bike. How do we translate this in an experiment? We went to UCLA and we asked about 500 students to try and recall the 10 Commandments. By the way, none of them could. It was interesting by itself. They made up all kind of new commandments. But after just trying to remember the 10 Commandments, we gave them the same task in which they could cheat. What happened? Nobody cheated. Now, it wasn't as if the people who remembered many commandments didn't cheat and the people who remembered a few commandments cheated. Nobody cheated. That basically suggests that once you get people to consider their own moral code, we basically kind of reduce the flexibility by which we could justify all kinds of moral behavior. We ran a similar experiment, by the way, with a big insurance company. The only thing we did was we changed the line on the signature. You know, usually in insurance form, you fill the insurance form and you sign at the bottom. By the time people sign at the bottom, they finish cheating. It's over. Right? So we changed the line and we got people to sign up front. Turns out people cheat much less when they first sign. Now, if you think about this type of cheating, this small cheating that happens very frequently, and you think about rationalization and morality, I think the big issue is to think about those things as conflicts of interest. Right? We all know conflicts of interest. If you like any particular sport, there was some soccer game, I understand, from the discussions this morning. Imagine that you're a fan of some team and the referee calls a call against your team. You think the referee is evil, vicious, blind, something, right? There's no way not to see things from the perspective of your team. Well, you know, maybe in sports, conflicts of interest are not bad. Maybe it's even good. Maybe it makes life more fun. But banking, medicine, how much do we really want conflicts of interest in those industries? Not so much. And I think one lesson is to try and think about how do we decrease conflicts of interest, right? It's not something that we necessarily see in ourselves or in others. I want to tell you one last story. If you think about cheating and people start cheating a lot, there's a question of why people would stop and how would it work. So we've done lots of experiments in which we gave people hundreds of opportunities to cheat over time. And what we see is people cheat a little bit, cheat a little bit, cheat a little bit, and then at some point, many people switch and start cheating all the time. And we call this the what the hell effect. Right? Now, if you start cheating all the time, why would you ever stop? So to look at this, we decide to think of something like the Catholic confession. Anybody here Catholic? A few, kind of lower, a few higher. So no offense to anybody in the audience, but we decided to go and talk to real Catholics. We went to Italy. We went to talk to Catholic priests, and we say, please explain to us how confession works. Because from an economics perspective, if you can ask for forgiveness and be absolved, wouldn't you just cheat more? In fact, wouldn't you cheat just on the way to confession? That's kind of the optimal approach. Another theory, we say, maybe confession is like part of the cost-benefit analysis. You say, not only would I steal and I might go to prison, but I also have to talk to somebody. That would increase the cost of cheating. Turns out that doesn't work empirically. We said maybe confession is like the 10 Commandments. When you think morality, you think honesty, and it turns out that's part of the reason. When people go to confession, they feel good about themselves. They don't, they speak nicer when they walk home and so on. They're nicer to their kids and family a few days afterward. But the thing that interests us the most was this idea that confession can open a new page for people. And we've done this experiment. So we get people to cheat a little bit, they cheat a lot. And then after a while, we ask them to confess. Not a religious confession, but we ask them, please write for us some bad things you've done recently. And they write something, and they shred it for real. And then we ask them to ask for forgiveness from whatever deity they believe in, and they do that as well. What happened? People cheat a little bit, they start cheating a lot, and then after confession happened, people reset their moral compass and they start clean. Now, later on, they go up again, but at least for a while, it's working. And I think there's a couple of lessons here. One is, we might think about confession. It's a mechanism that religion has adopted, but maybe we should adapt it more generally. Maybe there should be an opportunity for our politicians or our bankers to ask for forgiveness from time to time and open a blank slate. And I just wanted to leave you with two thoughts. One is, when you go home tonight and you go to your room tonight, ask for forgiveness before you start the next day. I think it will be a better day tomorrow. The second thing is that our understanding of dishonesty, I think, has largely been skewed to think about big cheaters who cheat in a cost-benefit analysis. And of course, those exist. But I think we must understand human follies, right? What is the chance that we would have a banking system that has tremendous conflicts of interest, and we will just put new people in and they will not misbehave? Incredibly low. We really have to understand how people interact with systems, what are the weak points of the system that don't fit with our human psychology and our ability, and to think about how we design those systems so we don't have these tragedies repeating over and over. And thank you very much.